Good morning, students. This is for the lesson of today, which is patterns and probability and data management, which is talking about bar graphs and those sorts of things. So here we have two double bar graphs, or we have double bar graphs that we're talking about. Double bar graphs are really useful to compare similar points of information and allow us to expand on that. So here we have two graphs, company A and company B, and we're going to be asked some questions about that. When you glance at the two graphs, which company appears to have higher monthly sales? Well, it seems like company A has higher monthly sales because the bars themselves are physically larger. Now, when you look closely at the scales, which company actually has higher sales? Well, this one has sales of, they're both in the that unit of thousands, except this one's only going up by 20. This one's going up by 100. So this sale rate up here is 400,000, where this is 80,000. So which company do you think makes bigger sales? Well, actually, company B would be. Why are most of the bars on for company B so short? Well, so one of the things that happens is sometimes you'll have an outlying month, a month where you sort of make a lot of your sales. And that's April for this company. They made a lot of sales, and it actually was so big that it dwarfed all the other ones. It made the other months seem less significant, but they could have still been good months, but April was just an outstanding month. They're going to talk about this company and give us an idea of what these companies are actually for. I would think that this is something like, before I read the bottom thing, because I know what it is now, um, I would think this is something like some sort of garden center, right? A garden center doesn't really have any sales during winter. And then April, say you have really good weather for 2 weeks in a row, all of a sudden April just skyrockets and everyone's going to the garden centers wanting to pick up their flowers and getting ready for season and all these sorts of things. And that would cause a massive, massive spike in sales where these other sales maybe aren't as good. Now, that's not actually the real one, but we'll see what the actual answer is. So then they're going to ask us, okay, so you should complete your own double bar graph for this information and jot it down. So I'm using the information above this and I'm putting it down here with a similar scale because it's a better way of representing the information. That way it's not dishonest or I'm not skewing results. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting January and both sales are going to be beside each other. Now the top graph, which is company B's graph, is not super clear in terms of very specific numbers, right? We get a sense that this is maybe around 70,000, maybe a little less than that, 60,000. This is maybe 50,000, maybe 40,000, right? It doesn't give us an excellent sense when this one's a lot more accurate and easy to understand. Now, even though these numbers are not very accurate, it doesn't mean the graph as a whole is not bad because really you're really focusing on what happened with April. That's kind of what the big month seems like. So let's represent this information. I wrote it down over here and we have it as follows, right? We have this massive, massive spike, and we can also get a really good sense that, well, clearly company B actually makes a lot more sales than company A. And then I'm going to ask some questions. So which month did company A sell more than company B? Well, really only February. That was the only time that it sold more. During 1 month, company B had several items in their store autographed by a famous athlete. Which month do you think that was? Well, April, because that's when a massive, massive spike in sales was, right? One of the companies sells mostly winter sporting goods, the other sells mostly summer sporting goods. Which company do you think is which? Well, I think company A is winter, company B is summer, because you see the numbers are getting higher in the summer, where the numbers are starting to fall off actually during the summer for the other company. So the company that sells more would be the winter store, and the company that sells more during the summer would be the summer store. That would just make sense. We can look over here and we can say, okay, well, now we have a real estate agent. She sells houses and condominiums. Condominiums are essentially like apartments and stuff like that. And her graph represents all the different sales she makes over the course of the year. Okay, so we're using this information. We're saying, okay, well, there's no actual key or legend written up here, but you could probably make a good guess if we use this information, saying, okay, in May and June is typically the best months for selling houses. So if we look at May and June and say, okay, well, which one's higher in May and June? Well, the later one. So that's likely when the one that correlates to houses, and the other one's condominiums. Now, this real estate wants to go on vacation, and she doesn't know when she should go. Now, if you focus on, she does both houses and condominiums. If you were to just focus on exclusively condominiums, you would say, well, November actually looks pretty good. It's the lowest number out of condominiums. It's probably your best time. Except November still has a pretty high amount of housing sales. So what you should actually look at is, as a whole, which two are the months that look the best? Well, February and December both have the lowest average sales. You know, there's less condominiums sold in November, but there's a lot of houses sold. So overall, December and February are probably your best bet. And yeah, it's because they have the lowest overall sales. So now we're going to look at this last page, the bar graph and the stem leaf plot. The bar graph and the stem leaf plot at the right both represent the same data. Use the graph to answer the questions below. Put a check mark under the name of the graph that you used to find the answer. Put a check mark under both if you could have used either graph to find the answer. So, how many students took the test? So what we can do is we can start adding this up and go this way and say, well, it's 1 plus 2 is 3, 4, so it's 7. Now, this you could do it this way, but I actually originally did it this way because I just looked at it and I'm like, well, this is a lot easier. It's a lot more visual. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, I think, yep. 1 second. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There's 21 students, and I found which one would be easier. I think the stem and leaf plot. You could probably use both, to be honest. But maybe you do check both check marks. But I found the stem and leaf was a lot more visual and easier for me to know. In what range were most of the marks? Okay, in what range? Well, we can just look at it here and say, well, it looks like 70. The 70 range. And which one tells us more clearly? Put a check mark under the name of the graph that you used to find the answer. Put a check mark under both if you could have used either graph to find the answer. So I use this one for this question. I could have also used this one though, so I'm going to put a check mark under both. How many students have marks over? Sorry, how many students had marks in the 90s? 2. How many students had marks below 60? Below 60. 1, 2, 3. I think that one's a better one, more clear. What was the highest mark? Oh, this one doesn't say that. 95. Right? 3. What was the most common mark? Okay, so this one doesn't tell that information, obviously. The most common one is, it looks like an 87. It has 3 people that got 87, 8 and 7. So 87 and the stem and leaf plot. What was one graph easier to use? I think the stem and leaf plot was probably actually easier for me to understand, to know specific marks and stuff like that. I thought that was a better way of describing the information. All right, so this was the next lesson. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you this morning.